In Flashpoint Fire Rescue, you are firefighters and you are going into a burning building, extinguishing some fire with the goal of saving some lives. Well, there are human lives and some animal lives as well. You are going to lose the game if the building collapses or if you lose a number of victims. This game is very thematic, and it's most of the rules, luckily, are along those lines as well, making it easy to understand. As I said, the players will win the game if they rescue enough lives, which are, in this case, 7 lives. You will also lose the game if 4 or more people or animals die, or if the building collapses, it sustains too much damage. Over the course of the game, players are going to take turns. One player will go. They will do a number of actions indicated on their player card here, and then they will roll for more fire to come out, and then the next player will go, and the game will go on and on from there. So let's kind of take a look at the flow of the game here. During the game, you're going to be moving around. You're going to be fighting fire. You're going to be identifying points of interest and seeing if there are people there. If there are, you're going to be carrying them out. You're going to be trying to remove hazmat from the game board, so to prevent explosions, and you might be chopping your way in and out of certain areas. You can also utilize vehicles like the fire truck and the ambulance. I should also note that we're doing the experience game here, and I've actually set it up for a veteran game. There's also a family game in there, but we're not doing that. So there's fire. There will be smoke in the game. Let's actually take a look at the game board. The back side of this has another structure on it, so we're playing on this particular side. So we've got these question marks, which are points of interest. There are some that are, if we look at this, there are some that are going to be false leads. There are going to be some that are people, okay, that you're trying to save. There's also, as I mentioned, there can be smoke, which eventually could turn into fire. There's fire itself. There are doorways. Doorways can be either in their closed positions as you see them, or their open positions. Spaces like this show that there is a hole in the wall. There's a damage. These black cubes are areas that the wall has been damaged. If a wall has 2 cubes on it, like so, it's considered open. You can walk right through. And those spaces are, that's contributing to the collapse of the building. Sometimes you may choose to make a hole in the wall. These 2 spaces here would be considered adjacent now. There's no wall there, so fire and people could pass freely through it. So that's showing you that there is an opening in the wall where there was once a door. The doors can be opened, and that's a door in its open position. And those spaces are considered adjacent in terms of being able to move as well. There are also, as I mentioned, hazmat, which can explode. They're very dangerous. There's your ambulance, which can move onto any blue space, and the fire truck can move on to any of these spaces. There's also hot spots, which can come out on the game, which show particularly dangerous areas on the board, and we'll go into those rules later. Each of you will have a character, which will have a special ability. There are other characters that you can either start with or switch out during the game. You can do crew changes, which is kind of cool. I should also notice that I'm using some cubes here to make it easier to explain. Jesse and I like to play with these cubes to make the game a little bit easier. Future versions of the game, or maybe the version of the game you have, will have perhaps different miniatures or have some pieces to make it a little easier for you. I happen to like this system. We both enjoy this system. You also have a color, which denotes which firefighter you are. So this is the yellow player, this is the orange player. There are additional pieces here. Later versions of the game will include those different sculpts for these pieces, so you may have that one. There are also these action tokens, which we'll be showing later, and these pieces here. So once these run out, as I say, the game will end, or if a number of these people are killed, 4 or more, the game will end in a defeat as well. Those will both end in defeat, but if you save 7 people, then you will have won the game. You'll also notice along the perimeter of the board these black black dice numbers here and red dice numbers. That's going to be used for discovering things while rolling both of these die. There's a die 8 and a die 6 that you'll be using throughout the game. One other thing you can see, there are these areas with the board is divided with these red lines here. You can see those red dotted lines, which break the board into 4 quadrants. That's another thing to note. And then you'll see there are these white walls that you can't get past, so you'd have to use the door to get out through here. This is now a open wall, so you could go through this way as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and look over a full turn. So on your turn, you'll be able to do a number of actions. So let's say the rescue specialist is going first. Now you'll notice that on her card, her specialty, and a lot of characters are like this, she's good at something and she's also bad at something. The rescue specialist has 4 action points as denoted by these pieces that we put here, these little markers, these 4. Then she also has 3 free movement APs, action points, which we've denoted by those to make it easy. Again, those don't come with the game. The rescue specialist can chop for 1 AP, which normally takes 2 AP when we look at our list, action points. But it costs them double to extinguish fire and smoke. Okay, so she has a little bit of she's good at rescuing people, but she's bad at putting out fires. The hazmat technician, he can actually has a special action to remove hazmat from the game. So let's look at what those actions actually mean. So the first thing you can do is you can move. So moving around in the game, I'll use this figure here to show. You can just move 1 space here, 1 space here, 1 space here. You go 1. Let's say I wanted to open this door. I could use an action point to open the door and then move into here. Anytime that you move into a space with a person, point of interest, you would reveal that and you would see whether that's nothing, so it would be removed from the board. If it was actually a person, that person will be available to be carried out. So let's look at this. If you were trying to move them, well, it's heavy. Anytime you want to move a person or a hazmat, it costs you double to move anywhere. So if you wanted to move from here and bring that person, it would cost you 2 action points. If you were to move here, it would be 2 more action points. So it's very heavy. If you're carrying hazmat, the same thing. You cannot carry a person and hazmat at the same time. You just can't do it. Another thing you can do, actually I should mention also, you can never carry a person or hazmat through fire. Again, that's one of the nice things about this game where everything kind of makes sense. If you carry a person through fire, they would be killed. If you carried hazmat through a fire, it would explode, so you can't do that. But you can actually move through fire. It just costs you double. So this would be 2 action points, 2 action points, and then 1 action point. So we need 5 to get through there. So it'd be quite a bit. So that's that. You can also close doors if you like to close doors as well, if for some strategic reason you'd like to do that. You can also extinguish smoke. So if we had some smoke on the board and I was here for 1 action point, I could extinguish the smoke. Fire, I can turn into smoke for 1 action point, or I can just for 2 action points remove it completely. So that's extinguishing fire and extinguishing smoke. And you can only do that in adjacent spaces. So if there was fire, here, here, and here, I could not do this, but I could turn this to smoke and then remove it. And this one I couldn't touch because this wall is separating there. Fairly straightforward, makes sense, you're not in that room. The other thing I can do is I can chop. So for 2 action points, I can chop. And again, these are all listed here for the numbers, so it's easy to remember. Or not to remember, but easy to reference. I can chop for 2 action points, I can put a hole in this wall. Now if I did it again for 2 more, or if there was already a hole there, I could chop 1, and then I can actually move through that wall. So it's if I need to get through and I don't want to go around a large amount of fire, or you want to get through someplace quick and drag a victim out, then you can do so. Couple more things. You can drive, if you are in the ambulance, you can drive it for 2 action points to another space. If there happens to be a firefighter with you, they can choose to stay in that space, and you would drive over here, or you can bring them with you, and it doesn't cost them any movement. If you want to move here, it's 2. If you want to move to the other side of the board, it's 4. Same thing goes with the fire truck. The only notable difference in terms of how you move the fire truck and the ambulance is that the fire truck, you have to drive it. The ambulance, if you are anywhere you are, you can always call to radio the ambulance. So so it would be the same 2 action points, and the ambulance would come over right over to whatever space you wanted. So if you're moving across the border before, 2 to these. So if I were over here, I could call the ambulance for 4, and if there was a firefighter in it, he could come along too. Or if I was in the fire truck, I could drive it only for 2. 2 or 4, respectively. Okay. The other thing, as I mentioned, you can carry victims. So why would you want to move those fire truck and the ambulance? Let's do the ambulance first. If you were to have the ambulance here, and you were to carry this victim out, 2 action points, 2 action points, 2 action points. The second they got to the ambulance, you will have saved them. And that's how you save. And I usually put them over here to show that that's one of the 7 that you need to win. This isn't an official way, but we usually put when they die on this side to show that we're getting closer to our lose condition. The last thing you can do with the vehicles, actually the next to last, I lied. One of the things is that you can spray the deck gun. That's 4 action points, which is quite a bit. When you shoot the deck gun, whatever zone the truck is in, so you'll see it's within this red dotted line here. So this whole space here, you are shooting the deck gun. Now let's move over here because I think it's going to be a better example. So if you were in the fire truck here, you could shoot the deck gun. And in this one, again, you're going to be shooting into this area here that's denoted by the red dotted line. You would roll the dice, and you'll see we have a 3 and a 1. So this is 3, and this is 1. We would have shot the deck gun into this space. Anything adjacent, this, and this would be extinguished. So the deck gun, you can see, is a very powerful thing to use. The problem is that sometimes if you hit it here, if we had just sprayed here, we would have gotten rid of this because it's considered adjacent, but we would not have gotten rid of any others. So if you were to shoot into here, you would miss everything basically. So the deck gun is very good if there's a large amount of fire, but the more effective the deck gun is at getting rid of a bunch of stuff, then those 4 action points, they don't become as efficient. But it does keep you from having to walk around in rooms and things. So the deck gun is a large amount of commitment, but it can be very effective in eliminating the fire. Large amounts of fire in a hurry. So the other thing you can do if you start your turn on a truck, you can actually do a crew change, but it has to be your first action of your turn. In that way, you can change from your current character to one of the other characters. So I told you about these characters, and so to show you some of the other characters, we have the Generalist, who has 5 action points, so they have extra stuff but no special ability. You have 4 action points with the Fire Captain, and he gets 2 free command AP, meaning he can spend those and other actions to move firefighters, as long as the player agrees to it, around on their turn. So like, if I were the Fire Captain, doesn't matter, I could be anywhere on the board. I could move this guy for 1, and if he had this person, I can move him 2 and 2. That would take 4 of my actions, but it would save a person. So the Fire Captain is sort of on the radio, and he's like, go through that doorway, and he's kind of explaining what to do, and he's moving those characters. So he's a very interesting character. Then you have this Cass Firefighter. He gets 3 free Extinguish AP, okay, and he has 3 action points. So has more actions available to fight fire, so he's very useful. Then we have the Imaging Technician. So for 1 AP, you can actually, let's put another one of these guys out. You can actually check, so if you were to use his power, you could check, is this a person? And you'd flip it over. This one is not, so now we know we don't have to waste our time to go all the way to that person to try to see if they're an actual person and then find no one. If you think of it, it's like these points of vision, just like, I think there's someone in that room up there. Okay, you stay here, man. We're going to go check it out. And then you go up and, there's nobody there. It was a false alarm. Or there's someone there and you have to drag them out. So that's kind of cool. The paramedic has an interesting thing. So as I explained, it does take 2 actions to move with a person. But if you were the paramedic, you could treat that person very quickly. And then when you move, they move with you. So you can move them with you. So you're just using your normal movement. So it's quite effective at getting that person out. So that's kind of a cool one. And then you have the driver operator. He actually fires the deck gun for only 2 AP. So he can, instead of taking your entire turn to shoot the deck gun, you could do it twice. Also, he has the fun ability. So in our example before, I should also mention, if I was firing the deck gun from here, you can see this is 1, but 5 is up here. It's not within our quadrant. You simply flip the die over. So now the space I would be hitting would be 1, 2, 1, 2. So I like that. It gets rid of these two. But if I wanted to, with his special power, he also has where you can actually choose to re-roll one die or the other. So maybe I said I want to keep the 2 because I want to get this line. Maybe I'll keep the 2 and re-roll this one, although that was quite a good roll. But that's just an option. So those are the characters. So one last thing I want to mention is not counting your free AP, but your regular action points. If you choose not to spend those actions on your turn, then you can take, so if I only use 3, then I could actually take 3 action points and bank them for the next turn to have a more effective turn later. So, and you can never have banked more actions than you have listed on your card here, so 4, 4. But that's kind of an interesting little strategy. If you don't have a very good action or move to make on your turn, you can save those actions for later. Okay, so after you take your full turn, then you would go ahead and roll for the fire. And what all that entails is you roll the dice, and you'll say 4 and 6. Okay, so we'll say this is 6 and 4. Okay, so let's just show you, for instance, if it were 5, you would put smoke out here. Okay, fine. If it were, let's say we had rolled a 4, 3, then we would put smoke out. Anytime smoke, however, is touching fire, it will actually turn into fire. Okay? If this was the roll here, if we had a 2 and 4, okay, so we would be putting smoke out again. Smoke plus smoke equals fire. In our roll before, if you rolled and you hit fire, so if there was fire here, then you would have an explosion. In which case, this fire, if we rolled this 1 and 4, for instance, right, and it hit this, then you would put fire in every adjacent space. Here, these are both walls, so we would actually damage this wall and then this wall. If there was a hole here, you would ignore that and you would just place fire here. Additionally, if you hit fire into a space like this, so if you were to roll this space, you would damage the wall. Sorry, let me just... and then you can't physically put fire here, so you would go until you could. So you would follow this line until you could either place fire or damage a wall. For instance, if you were to have rolled this space, it would blast that door off, and blast that door off. Then it would follow all the way down the line until you could place something or you could damage a wall. If you had to keep placing fire, you could do until you got to here. So let's take a look now at a couple of sample turns. Oh, I should also mention real fast, if you happen to roll onto a hot spot, this is called the hot spot, this little dot here. So if you were to have rolled this space, when you were done with rolling for the fire and placing out the fire, resolving the explosions or whatever, then you would go ahead and roll again. So this would be 5, 2. So the fire you would put smoke here, and then you would put a hot spot out. So once all these are gone, it doesn't matter anymore. But what this does is accelerates the game, because every time you hit a hot spot, you're rolling again. So the fire is going twice and then putting out a new hot spot. So you get to a point as the game progresses where you're rolling more and more and more each time, and it's putting out more fire than you can possibly handle. So there is a curve of the game getting, you want to be speedy about that, because eventually you're just not going to be able to keep up with the level of the amount of fire coming out on a regular basis. I should also mention that if fire hits the hazmat, there's an automatic explosion. So you would, if you had fire hit that, you would resolve an explosion just like if fire hit fire or smoke hit fire. If the fire touches a civilian or person, they're killed instantly and they would go on the dead pile. And then if you get 4, like I said, you would lose the game. Okay, so let's kind of look real quick at just playing through a turn here. So if this were the state of the game, let's say I was going first here, I could say, okay, well, there's hazmat here and there's a person here, so we're both going to go in. So I'm going to use an action point to chop this wall. It only costs her 1 point to chop a wall. I'm going to do it again. Now this is a dangerous move because you are weakening the building, but sometimes it's necessary. Okay, and then I'm going to move 1, 2, 3 times. I'm using my free moves, and then I'm going to move a regular move, and I'll see. And it's nobody. So I should mention also, we'll cover this now. So now my turn is, I've got 1 move left. I don't really want to move anywhere because it's not going to help me to move here or here at the moment. And if somebody came out in my space or one of those spaces, it would be better. So I'm going to bank this action for next round. Okay, so that's my turn over. Now I'm going to roll for fire. So I would roll these. It's 1 and 4. 1 and, 4 is here. So we'll put smoke out there. Okay, now my turn's over, except we have 2 people, so I'm going to roll for another point of person of interest. 4 and 6, 6 and 4. There's fire here, so we're going to follow this blue arrow. See these little arrows here? There's blue and yellow. It's going to go to here, and we'll put the person of interest, the point of interest out here. These should be hidden, actually. Always be hidden. Okay, so one strategy. Actually, I put the blank one, so that's a looked at thing. So one strategy is to try to kind of cycle through these people so that you can find somebody quicker. Okay, now it's on to this hazmat technician. So I'm going to take 1 move to go here, and then he's going to take 2 moves to destroy this hazmat. So it's off the board, and it's no longer able to hurt us. Normal characters could carry the hazmat out. Hazmat technician is very good early in the game to try to get rid of these very, very dangerous things. So I think what I'll do is I'll move 1 more space onto here, even though it's dangerous because if it explodes, that's another rule. If a fire smashes into where you are, explodes into you, you are injured, and you are placed on the ambulance. You don't have any other bad effects except that you're placed into the ambulance. So that's it. Okay, so that's all for him. I'll roll. So 7 and 2, 7 and 2. So smoke would come out here. So that's very dangerous now. So if we went back to her, it'd be very dangerous because she'd want to, it costs her double to get rid of that. So, and if this turns into fire or something were to happen, then that would be very dangerous there. Anyway, that's the basic rules of the game gone over.